We're back with some Q&A.
Oh, das Q&A geht los.
Secrets of the Atlas. We've got
technische
a nice
Probleme
big one. I'm going to
gelöst. Let's
restart. We had a
go.
little bit of technical difficulties there, but we're ready to get into a nice big long Q&A session here. So I did ask the question that after nearly a year since the last major Path of Exile release, it feels like there's a fair bit of pressure on this one to be something pretty major, but also to show that you guys still love and care about Path of Exile 1 and have a future for it.
For sure, yeah. So, as I was just saying, I feel like we've kind of finally got our shit together as a studio now, as I said in the intro. So we've sort of changed our approach. We've we've merged the development teams back together. We've kind of got everyone on one floor in the middle layer, like all the developers. And now we're kind of making it so that, we're effectively moving people, backwards and forwards from PoE 1 and 2 sort of as needed. And that's definitely a much better structure for us because it just means that we get, all our best people can work on, whatever game needs it right now. We've always worked well with kind of the fixed, in the past, sort of with the fixed deadline model where it's like, we have a fixed deadline, but if we, and what's in the patch depends on what's ready by the time we get there, and I think that's just going to result in a much better experience for players. And so now that we've kind of got that, I mean, this really represents what we can deliver sustainably, what we can deliver in 4 months, and so we'd expect to see this kind of amount of content every 4 months, as we go forward, and for PoE 1 and 2 as well. So now that things are back, I would say we're kind of back in our stride again. Things should go a lot smoother from now.
In sum, we're back.
That's not
We're so back.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we're back.
I did feel like that. I feel like the reception's been very positive so
Yeah.
far, and I've been having a bit of a chance to play around with mercenaries, which are exceeding my expectations in terms of how fun and powerful they are. I feel like you guys have made them really powerful too. So
we've honestly been talking about making a mercenary for probably 5 to 10 years. It's been one of those things.
You've been telling me about it for years.
Yeah, exactly.
Came up with the PoE 2 Rogue Exiles. Came up during Settlers League. I mean, that's just the. Recent. I mean, a year ago, within the last year stuff.
You guys baited me pretty hard because last league you put out this system where you have these exiles that you send out on maps, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna gear them and all this stuff, and it's like, oh, I can't wait. That's what I've always wanted. And then it wasn't that, and I'm like, now you're never gonna do that because you did this instead. And then literally next league, you do the mercenaries finally. So was it like waiting on something? Was there something that needed to happen there?
I guess it was more just a question of having a good design for how it could work. And, there was a couple of other things. One thing that wasn't really mentioned in the video very much is that the mercenaries do count as half a player for the purposes of drops and monster difficulty. And so that's going to kind of change the calculus a little bit. You're effectively getting 9-player difficulty and loot, which there is some differences to the way that works now. But that's kind of one of those things that if we just added mercenaries without doing something like that, then it would mean that the game would be too easy. So that's why we've kind of got that situation going on.
It means at best, if you're a more bad build, bad character, new player, whatever you want to call that, they're going to carry you probably, or could carry you. And at worst, if you're the power of 10,000 gods and have infinite everything and screen coverage and DPS, then they're just boosting your loot. Right, so there's a flaw there on either side that is just going to be beneficial to every single player. So
it sounds like absolute beautiful chaos, like 6-player party plus 6 exile mercenaries.
Our initial design had it that you could have up to 6 players, or 1 player and. Well, I guess 3 players and 3 mercenaries, It was like a mercenary takes a player slot is what we initially had.
That was the initial way to think about balance, but I think it wouldn't have been nearly as good because you want the mercenary to be part of your build to kind of feel like it's actually, because, it comes with auras and things like that. Effectively that all becomes part of your build at that point. So it's kind of important that you don't have to sacrifice that when you're playing in a party with other people.
Didn't want to have the thing of okay, you join your 3 friends and then whose mercenary gets used.
Yeah, exactly.
Do I not get to have my guy now and I don't get,
Nein.
We ended up getting away from that and just letting everyone bring the Merc, and which results in
wir gehen ganz
peak
normal
chaos.
SC Trade rein.
But,
Ich bin aus PoE 1 aktuell zu sehr raus,
you can also have an Animate Guardian, and you did tell me that there's changes for that as well.
Yes, of course you can have. In fact, I expect a lot of people to now have.
Also wenn du Bock hast, können wir auch
party with your 6 mercenaries and everyone with the Animate Guardian, because I mean, how can you add mercenaries and then have a point to say that they don't drop loot when they die, and also not make the same change to Animate Guardian? However. If they do die in the instance, you can't bring them back. So at least there is still that penalty to having them be weak. So if they just die at the start, they're gone.
Yeah. Until you play another
it's going to result in a lot more people using Animate Guardian in their build, but now you have to gear up your character, one Animate Guardian and one mercenary, so we'll multiple mercenaries technically, so we'll see how the itemization and trade economy goes in that regard. And
yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool though, is like having all that extra demand for gear, and that's I was certainly like thinking about how I want to keep some of this gear aside for like the potential mercenary I was trying to find and things like that. But that adds a lot to that. But I did want to, before we get stuck into some of the new content, just kind of like help ease people who maybe are a little bit worried about the future.
Rein, Onkel Bodis, gute Nacht dir.
So this is what you hope to be able to deliver every 4 months, and you've got a much more strict kind of like approach to that now, where you were saying to me like, well, if this thing that you're talking about is not ready, then it's not going in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas before you would push the date, I felt.
Exactly, 100%. So we've been in the kind of push the date mindset, I would say, for like a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And in the past, we were never like that. We were way more strict with it. And I think it was definitely beneficial to do that. The issue was it was so hard to develop PoE 2 at the same time when we had all that stuff. So now that we're kind of like in the mode where we can support both with the release frequently, it means we can kind of go back to that model. And as I said, I think it'll just be way better.
I just want to make sure we are always going to be that whole like plus or minus 1 week flexibility, because you have things like
there might be
holidays,
exactly.
conventions,
right.
clashes with things and all that. So obviously you get that just before we get held to the strict to the day 4 month thing. But yes, it is the goal. 100% you go back to that. I think there is it is very, very important that you have, as a player and a long-term player of a game, of which many of our players are, you have that consistency and you know what
Aber
to
das heißt,
expect.
wir haben jetzt tatsächlich PoE 2 für PoE 1 vernachlässigt.
Play for my 2 months. I know I
Nur
can
das
just
mal festzuhalten.
stop for 2 or swap to the other game, do that, and then I can
das
know
geht
it's
auch
going
so
to be coming
rum.
again in 2 months instead of that just like.
Der Patch ist noch nicht da, nicht announced worden.
That like unknown is very sad, honestly, as a developer and as a player, and I certainly don't want to do that ever again.
I imagine it has a toll on the team in terms of them like knowing, because it's hard to make content, I imagine, and just not have it get shipped. Like, because it's the dates being pushed out.
It depends on the person. Some people kind of like actually prefer that more. Some people do really like the deadlines. It's honestly a variety.
Yeah, okay, a bit of a mixture. And you mentioned blending the teams together. That's like a big change. Whereas before you were explicitly trying to separate them, and there was the question of like, well, there's problems with that, right?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, we had problems when they were blended originally, like years ago, where PoE 2 wasn't getting like it kind of wasn't working because that deadline was so far out that it kind of worked. So we had to split the team to get PoE 2 shipped at that point. But now that we're back in, like releasing frequently, it just makes more sense to bring everyone back together again. And it keeps the expertise up. It makes sure that, like the games are, there's just technical things like making sure that the engine is like in sync for both games and that kind of stuff. Like there's just so many elements that sort of make it better to have everyone merged together, I think.
I imagine it helps with the cross-pollination between games. We just got pausing, which is
for sure.
one of my
zwei neue Chassis und nichts, ein bisschen mehr als Leitungsbisse haben.
Improvements. That's a phenomenal announcement. But I certainly see people asking about things like WASD and stuff like that, and this support for the future is...
Unfortunately, WASD just can't really happen because, I say that, but there's the thing, right? So effectively, in order for WASD to happen, we would need to be able to change the rigs over to the PoE 2 character rigs. In order for that to happen, we need to get all the micros ported over, and then we'd need to port all of the armors from PoE 1 over to those rigs as well. So it would be a really long-term thing. Yeah. There might be a world one day where that can happen, but it's certainly a long process to get that to happen.
That's what I was kind of wondering is like, do you envision a situation where Path of Exile 1 is like warrants that sort of massive effort in a year or two or something like that?
Once we've got all the microtransactions ported, which we're doing anyway, then it wouldn't be like so bad. I mean, it would be a lot, but not like, not like completely unreasonable. So it's a thing that could happen, but it's a lot of effort to get that feature. So the main reason to do it isn't even for WSD. It's because we've been pretty unable to make new combat animations for PoE 1 for so long due to all of the problems with the rigs. So if the main reason to do it would be that we can make like new actual melee skills properly again. That would be the reason. I mean, hopefully we can get to that. It's just it'll take a while though.
A lot of the skills you'd notice, and if people have been playing PoE 1 for years, any of the new skills we add often just reuse the same animations.
Exactly.
And they're not exactly the most modern things in the world.
Not so much to do with it now.
You don't get to do the cool custom flurries with like your swords and combos and all that kind of stuff. And
das Schwierige ist also die ganzen Skills
I mean, you
damit zu
still obviously
verbinden.
have Cyclone, where you just spin in a circle, and if you remove all the effects from that, you're literally just on a pivot doing this. It looks a little bit silly, but
I mean, I am keen to do it though. Like it's just it'll take a while.
Yeah. It's I feel like I notice the kind of an increasing disparity between like the bosses in PoE 1 kind of like pushing further ahead because you have a bit more freedom, I guess, to use more modern.
Well, the bosses are new, like new content, right?
They're
so
straight up
they get to
PoE2
just and the
style.
engine's the same, so you get to use all the modern tech for completely new content.
So
like
they're looking like better and better and better, but the players are kind of staying a bit behind.
Yeah.
So
Don't need to rig anything to the bosses. They don't need to equip 10,000 microtransactions, thankfully.
So that's a unique challenge for you, but it seems like you've got a plan of kind of like how to approach it potentially.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, all right. So while we're on this kind of like frank discussion, is like something that people often have been mentioning is this idea that like maybe they love Path of Exile 1, but they're not that interested in Path of Exile 2. And they maybe feel like their money when they buy a supporter pack for Path of Exile 1 is going to a company that's developing both games, and one of those being something that they're maybe not that interested in.
Right. Well, I mean, like ultimately,
nachdem
like
Ding
now that we're
sollten
kind of in the
PoE1
shared
auf jeden
model,
Fall
like
wieder
it's kind
glücklich
of,
gestellt werden.
it doesn't really,
Also,
it's sort of hard
das
for us
ja-
to say,
das ist ja
like, you know,
big.
that like
Das ist
money
einfach
goes
nur
to one particular team or another. Like, it doesn't really work like that because we're all
Oder gibt's schon wieder
the
Mimimi?
main thing is just to understand is that when we're in PoE1 development mode,
Oder
and
PoE1
PoE1
Bett,
takes
oder?
precedence, and like any resource that it
Passend
needs,
wie
like there's
das
not
Ding
going to
da
be
dazu
we can't do
reagiert,
this
ne?
because PoE2 needs it.
Den
And when
Monka
we're in
als
PoE2
Captain,
development
okay.
mode, it's the opposite of that, right? Where like we've got that sort of going on. So there's always going to be people working on each game like all the time, but it's like if one's going to come out soon, that one is getting all the attention. And so like every resource that PoE1 could possibly need for this expansion was moved to it, if, to make that happen.
Yeah, I got to see that firsthand walking around. It was like 95% of people working on PoE1 right now.
Right,
So,
in this moment because it's in the last week. But but it's kind of variable. Like I mean, if you look at things like the, I mean, you've probably got a better idea of the breakdown. But it's like how much the VFX team was working on PoE1 versus 2 in like the last,
Yeah, the whole all but one is currently on PoE. All but 2. I guess that doesn't really make sense. They don't know how many. So 80% of the team is on PoE1 right now.
Yeah. But it's kind of variable through the months.
But like the dynamic thing is because obviously we had like 021
Deswegen kam der Patch nicht.
PoE2 that we're working on.
Deswegen
and,
kam der
yesterday
Patch
I
nicht
moved
letzte
some
Woche
people
und
onto
diese Woche
that,
auch
quickly
nicht.
got some stuff across the line. Literally 2 hours later, moved them back, and like it's like pretty hyperactive.
Ja,
Like,
jetzt haben sie geiles
but,
Zeug für
honestly, that's
PoE1 gemacht.
kinda how
Ne?
we-
Die League
our
kommt
leadership
jetzt.
style
Das
is.
heißt,
We
die
kinda
ballern
just-
jetzt für
we're a little
0.3.
bit crazy.
But I also think that
weiter
developing 0 to 1 at the same
PoE2.
time is kind of proof that it's possible, like to make sure that we can actually support both games at the same
Yeah,
time
I mean,
with the
releasing
level of
something-
support we need. I mean, there's those videos even that were made by the...
Ist aber gut,
like
dass die das jetzt
we're
so
getting more
machen,
people,
weil
it's like we
dann
can-
können
we can
wirklich
kind of
beide
manage
Spiele
it, so,
funktionieren.
I do feel like this is a positive upswing in that regard. Like it was definitely a bit of wavering there for a while, but I meant we went from a 1-game studio to a 2-game studio.
One thing to note,
Wir schaffen
and
jetzt, glaube ich,
this is-
wirklich mit
you
beiden
say about
Games,
the
ja.
bosses going up and the
Yeah.
characters, saying this, like that is also because we are, it is very, very, very useful in the same sense that certain game features get taken from one game to another. Like we see a lot of the quality of life stuff come to PoE1. Those bosses are, animated or rigs from PoE2 that we have like fully remodeled and reskinned. So you get to reuse that entire animation set. Sure, you got to tweak some stuff, but then like you can have one animation be 8 different skills if you put your mind to it and actually design the different outcomes.
Awesome.
So you end up with this thing where we're actually harvesting a lot of materials back from PoE2 to 1. And this is how we're going to be able to get even more bosses, even more monsters, even more of that content just all the time. So
It's in ways where players can't tell though. Like it's really quite invisible.
You wouldn't. Some people might be
könnte
able to
jetzt
see.
interessant
I feel
werden.
like I've seen that before, maybe, but you'd have to look real close and be real into it.
Wir haben jetzt viel
And so
von
obviously I know
PoE2
me
in
saying that
PoE1
removes the
reingebaut.
allure of it, but like it is like
War ja auch
ultra
umgekehrt,
beneficial to be able to harvest all that
Das
art.
heißt, die können jetzt aber
And
auch
so
viel
you
von
can look at it as
dieser
like,
dieser
that
Atlas-League
PoE2 art is going on
in
PoE2. It's
PoE2
not
reinballern.
like all of that. I'm just constantly. I'm gonna take
Ja,
that,
ich
take
denke
that,
auch,
take
die
that,
Mercs
take
für
that,
PoE2. Das könnte so ein Ding werden, was die jetzt da reinhauen. Und vielleicht auch dieses Crafting und so.
So hopefully it's more of a positive thing. But I think to wrap it up, I think what it all really comes down to is people just want to know that they can feel confident.
Vielleicht
that
Betrayal
Path of
auch für
Exile 1 has a
PoE2.
feature where you guys love it and giving it the attention.
PoE1 ist die letzten
next
2
year
Jahre
is
schon
going
der
to
Test für
be
PoE2
the
zum
year
Teil.
of Path of Exile, 100%, right?
I mean-
we're talking every 4 months both games. It's
Yeah.
every 2 months,
Seitdem
6 releases.
PoE2
like,
announced ist.
Wild.
6 releases
What are
a
we
year.
talking
That's
about?
about
Expedition
right.
Ritual.
If you guys can pull that off for a year, that's going to be wild.
Delirium.
I'm looking forward to it. But I mean, and to
Das kam in
allay people's
PoE1 für
concerns, I guess, in that
PoE2.
regard is you were telling me that this expansion is like
Das heißt, wir können Betrayal wahrscheinlich auch bald im PoE2 haben, wenn die das gerade
100%,
reworked haben,
like,
oder?
With obviously you
Betrayal macht schon
there's a
Bock.
whole bunch I can rant about here, but effectively, yeah, obviously you see Zana coming back. I know, spoiler, sorry, but it kind of was important.
Yep.
You got Zana coming back, and you've got it's an additive storyline for now, and that was kind of on purpose because I wanted the end game to be still familiar. I wanted people after coming back after almost a year to still have the core of the end game be familiar, but have this additive layer on top that's cool and new and they can explore. And I didn't want to like completely rework all the mechanics. And people are like, I want PoE1, finally a PoE1 expansion. They come back and they're like, the hell is this end game? This isn't what I remember. This isn't what I was familiar with. So it was really important with this update to have a layer of familiarity across the board, and then like improved and reworked things and removing, obviously with Betrayal, we've removed a lot of the constraints and annoyance and all of that, but it's still mostly just additive stuff on top. Same with the end game. The League is obviously additive, the Mercenaries. So having that there, so there's that core Path of Exile 1 familiarity, was important for this one. But yes, it is like part one of a new arc of the end game storyline. Zana's back. We've got a whole new thing to explore. I'm not going to spoil too much of what exactly happens, but there's some cool shit in there. But effectively, it's like a way to think about it is we're now kind of we're going to, over obviously a relatively long time, have the era of the primordials kind of phase out and have the era of this new endgame phase in. And so, yeah, it's kind of set up for right now it's an additive one. Maybe the next endgame one would be a bit more transformative. And then we'll go from there and just explore through this new storyline. So that'd be fun.
I can tell you're excited for like the future of PoE1, which is this is a good shift, I think. And you were saying you've even got like a good idea that for 326 that you really want to.
327, yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah, next one. Next one.
I do, yes. So, like, another thing with like this expansion, right, is like it's quite content heavy. When you do an in-game expansion in a league, it's a lot of content.
Yeah.
So, like, you have some things have to take priority, other things have to take less priority, and so like the character stuff where we've done a decent chunk of character balance and the new systems interact with all of that. There's clearly ones like I know Settlers had like just the Giga Melee rebalance and rework, and it changed like 1,000 systems in drastic ways and all of that. But again, I wanted this time more familiarity, and then 327 we're going to go just ballistic on the characters and do as much as we possibly can to like amp that up and I don't know, maybe fully revamp wand builds and create a whole new thing there. And now we have to because I said that. But that kind of stuff. So yeah, obviously you have ones that are more content centric, ones that are more character balance centric, and different focuses like that. So this one, content in game. We wanted our core players who have been playing for 10 years, the ones that are really looking for PoE, who are like mostly playing in the end game, to really have that like expansion and new boss fights. And that
was a discussion we had yesterday. Actually, was this idea that you don't necessarily have to worry about new player onboarding as much for Path of Exile 1 now. That's more the focus for PoE 2.
I would definitely say that, yeah, for PoE 1, it's like it's now very easy to just say, you know what, like if this isn't new player friendly, it's okay. Like we're making a game for the experienced PoE 1 players, so like we can just go ham with all that stuff.
Yeah, you can kind of go nuts with it.
Like if you're a new player, then PoE 2 is obviously going to be more appealing. Like I'd imagine they're more likely to want to go there. But of course, PoE 1's still, like it's still like we're not going to throw that away completely, but it's like certainly in terms of the focus of the content, like a lot more sort of in-game stuff, the pinnacle.
Aber lass mal quatschen, ob wir Samstagmorgen oder so reingehen.
Someone who actually is able to get to that content. So
es kann sein, dass
of course you still got the League, the Mercenaries. I think you initially when we first told you about it, you seemed a little bit like, oh yeah, I don't know how big that's going to be, but then when you actually played it, it's like
das ändert sich komplett.
It was beyond what I expected playing it, because I brought up a concern after watching the reveals that I felt like there was a bit of a gap, some disparity in kind of what you revealed once I got the sense of like what was Secrets of Atlas versus Mercenaries of Trathus. I had some concerns. I was like, okay, so the Mercenaries thing seems like really awesome, and that kind of is like, by the time you get to endgame, you've kind of started to explore a lot of that. And there's still more progression beyond that, but that's like, it's not necessarily like a ton of new content for that mechanic beyond that. And then you've got this new Secrets of the Atlas system, which starts at tier 14. It's very endgame pinnacle content focus. So I'm like, it feels like there's kind of a gap there between tier 1 and 14. But you mentioned yesterday after that discussion that maybe you've changed it.
I initially was like, people are coming back after a long time. They're going to come back, and yeah, some people have been playing, but like the majority of people haven't, and they're going to come back, get to that end game, and be like, all right, let's get my footing back, refigure things out. Obviously, Settlers is there, but I understand a lot of people have experienced that in the last year, so that's not going to feel too new, but there's a little bit going on there. You've obviously got Betrayal. And then, yes, we have our whole, like, certain scarabs up, certain scarabs down kind of balance, which I will note, by the way, only a portion of which will be in the initial set of patch notes. We'll have more scarab changes coming soon.
Patch note expansions to be announced.
People who, ideally, our PoE1 players know by now, we get a little bit feral and we just go to the end. We go till Friday of the release date for our balance changes. So not everything is there, but a lot of it is. You know, there's all those changes, and I thought, yeah, it's all good. What we'll do is aim for the people who really want new Pinnacle fights. Like, when we added the Tier 17s, they were a bridge between Pinnacle and Uber Pinnacles. So they weren't even the kind of highest tier of difficulty in the game. And you could argue these aren't either because they're Pinnacles, but they are a step above the existing Pinnacles. They are a bit harder. That being said, of course, just to clarify, there is a quest version of them where it is you get to Tier 14s and you will find them deterministically and get through all three of them. Just for the narrative, you get to explore all that. They're easier balance. And then you get into farm mode where you get the true rewards and the true, difficulty test. But, as you pointed out, I thought that'd be all right. And then you did raise your, like, but what about between Tier 1 and 14? It's not going to feel very new. And it was like...
Yeah, where's the content?
Yeah, fair enough. We made some changes, of course. And as much as now in the live stream it says we're introducing it at high tier maps, that is where the story is introduced, so to speak. But we're now adding a bunch of trickled stuff beforehand, all the way from like Tier 3 maps, where you're now, you're finding those memory influence maps,
Aber das ist auch interessant, dass es halt erst im Endgame losgeht.
You're getting the memory strand items, which are very useful for actually finding
good aber ich habe sonst auch mal League Mechanics geskippt bis Endgame.
So you're getting that all the way through. And then, once you get to the higher tier maps is when you get into the actual Pinnacle storyline with the new 3 Pinnacle bosses. Look, straight up, it was just like what we thought was good oversight. This is always what happens. I think even Jonathan mentioned earlier is that often, when we have these podcasts and interviews, it's just like half the time we end up discussing stuff that we're then going to go and change the day after or the day of, and that's exactly what we end up doing.
I feel like something always comes out of the Q&A. You usually do some sort of live development during these, which I love.
mean, there's so much that to not... And happening so rapidly and coming together very much, all together at the end. It's impossible to really have your eye on everything and not miss some things. Even we often miss things, and then it goes live, and then we address it then as well and stuff like that, right? It's just like very, very, very crazy. But again, that's I kind of think that's the magic to it, and what allows us to do so much in so little time. But it is also the thing as well that's going to result in the 6 expansions coming in the next year for the combined games.
So now the state of it looks like veteran players are going to be exploring the mercenaries as they're leveling up. They're going to be going into the end game and kitting out, trying to find their ideal mercenaries, gearing them up, swapping them around.
That's schon geil.
Starting to interact with memory enemies that drop memory influenced maps, that drop memory influenced items that they can craft.
Aber da kannst du selbst als Aurabot irgendwie Solo spielen, oder? Weil du einfach so geile Mercenaries hast.
System with the boosted
das ist ja
craft.
schon wild.
And that was you mentioned like a way of kind of getting the tiering system into Path of Exile 1.
The initial idea there was like, how can we get Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5 item drops from PoE 2 system into PoE 1, and it was like, well, why don't we just do it in the new endgame system? And then we're like, well, we can have more granularity. It can go all the way from 1 to 100. There's not really much point not. And so you're finding better items. Like every time you pick up these items, it could have a set of full Tier 1 modifiers. So that was the initial goal, and then it was like, well, may as well. Like the crafting orbs can just consume it as well. Now it's worth getting into that specifically. The basic crafting orbs all consume it, and right now, we don't have fossils and harvest and stuff do it, but it is our intention to implement that. But it's a bit scary. There's some OP there for sure. But I really like all those systems interacting and interweaving.
Please.
Now, what we're finding right now is that you actually do that crafting first, then you consume the memory strands for the final exalts and final applications. And that is something that is happening internally, and you're getting some pretty insane outcomes there to guarantee a T1 mod on your final exalts and stuff like that.
Gute Nacht dir. Ja, wir schreiben, definitiv.
Yeah, if we were to do it the other way around, you'd probably end up having it be very much using all those systems. So before we turn that on, we're going to review every single thing and make sure we're definitely happy with everything, because it is a very complicated web of craziness. But
Actually, that was a question I was wanting to ask. Was like, how do you even make new crafting systems for PvE1 at this point? Like with all the various intricate. Do you just kind of like make it and
you just
cross your fingers?
You just have to
bist dann quasi
just
mein
take the chance
Allround-Mod,
and just come up with what you can do, because
ja auch Mod hier.
if you worried about literally everything, you'd never make anything. You know, so you have to on some level.
But it's the same with uniques. It's the same with new character systems. There's so many variables that you kind of just like. Here's a thing.
Let's see what happens.
Jetzt auch rumpoken.
Oh,
yes, exactly.
That's kind of broken. Great.
It's fun though. It's just fun.
So you've got this progression system now, which sounds phenomenal. That sounds like a really nice improvement to just to like, while we're exploring the various changes you've done to things like the massive overhaul to Betrayal, for example, and like, the new Scarabs, those new systems, the integration of like the previous content that's gone core, and then you get to tier 14, and then it's like new story kicks in with the Secrets of the Atlas, the memory system, and that uses the kind of like the idea of those memory threads.
Yeah, we had what was memories before.
Yeah.
So that was like there was Alva's memory and all of that, and they had kind of different things. You couldn't juice them, but some of them gave pretty specific rewards, and a bunch of them were worth absolutely nothing.
The lack of juicing kind of meant that they didn't really have a good place in the end game, though.
Yeah, there was only a couple that were worthwhile.
We were like, we didn't really give that system justice, so like let's kind of use that as the baseline for the new memory threads, except we 100% allow full juicing.
Yep.
And make them more unique, have the alter mods at the end of each run, and then have the new influence mechanic. And then what we did is we took all those memories and we were like, I think it was Octavian actually who suggested it, was like,
good job.
Put all those on Kirak. And so all the Kirak missions that can now be offered, since Kirak also couldn't be juiced, Kirak missions now can give you all of the things that appeared on those memories before, which gives him a unique thing that he didn't have before as well, and it can be more valued farming now. So 2 birds, 1 stone.
Some love. That's
good suggestion.
Thanks, Octavian.
And but yeah, effectively those, and then we're like, those memory strands, we don't want it to just be I'm doing normal mapping, then you find the memory
Brains sahen auch so wild aus, ne?
I've already tripped up now. It's just the thing we were talking about yesterday with all the
terminology.
Memory threads versus memory strands.
The memory threads. Again, once you're playing, it's a bit more clear, but we've got a bit of synonym thesaurus issues going on. You're doing the memory threads, and it's like, well, we want to be able to do that experience without just having to go, I don't want to have to run a bunch of maps, get a thread, have some fun, and then I'm back to just, regular things. So we're like, well, once you finish the storyline, I won't explain exactly how that concludes, because it's a big one. What those maps that you can find on that thread now will start dropping. But it's T16s, and more frequency, and then but they will be rolling with Tier 17 mod pool, and we're kind of calling those T16.5s because they are very close to T17s, and it's kind of honestly, I would say in some cases, if you get the right memory skills, better than T17s, which I know has been a huge concern, and I agree with that, and I am finally, hopefully, we can not have just the age of T17s that can't self-sustain and you have to trade for, and a lot of frustration there. That's the hope. If it doesn't fully solve it, obviously it's still the intention to.
Well,
so we will.
Well, let's talk about the problem with Tier 17s then. So, like, obviously there's a few issues going on there. It seems like that you had this like very varied endgame, tons of different maps and everything, and then kind of narrow that down to 4 maps instead. And obviously it was presenting problems for build diversity as well.
It was also a clash because it was like those were meant to be the bossing way to get to the Ubers.
Yeah.
And it ended up being the juicing. And so then you have a kind of economy clash between people who want to farm bosses and people who want to juice. And it was like, okay, well, they were intended to be the boss way.
Eher Team Bossing oder Team Juicing?
But they were still kind of fun for both axes, in some regard, minus a few little bits and pieces. Like obviously we had to do some changes to the mods, how they generated. Like we certainly had some hiccups with that one the first time around. But it was then all of a sudden now T16s are dead.
Yeah.
So the hope here, bring them back. You can farm the map you want as with the originator influence on it, I believe is what the text said, or what I call memory influence or Zana influence. All of these things, whatever. They're influenced with a bunch of red and blue stuff. You get the pedals, you get the skills, but you get the div card you want, you get to farm the layout you want, you get to do the boss you want, and you don't have to deal with
Can you say somewhat definitively if like juicing is going to be happening at Tier 16s again, or is it still going to be Tier 17s a bit? Not sure.
I currently, as far as I can tell, it should be in the 16s, but I didn't want to make it that the 17s are just garbage.
Yeah.
So
you haven't taken a hard stance on it. Yeah.
I think, especially with the right memory influence skills appearing, which you do have to take a bit of a gamble for, and sometimes you get really good ones and sometimes you get okay ones. That's part of the fun when you get it and you're like, oh, yes, I got the epic one that revives monsters and I get all the loot twice. And then when you get that kind of thing, it's going to be like, okay, this is just 100% better. Like, how is it not? And then, of course, multiply that with all the All Flames and, there's going to be some madness occurring. Not Necropolis tier madness, but there will be madness. We have learnt from that a bit. Don't you worry about that. That was out of control on a level unprecedented. But still new tiers of madness.
There's a question from chat about Atlas passive skill tree and with it expanding, like with all these new things being added to it. Is that something you consider as to like how many points you end up getting and those decisions like between things?
I like the amount of points you get and the amount you can invest in a given tree loadout. I think that is correct.
Still feels right.
Like we do remove a little bit of nodes and we have added some, but I wouldn't we've added new ways to juice via the influence. We've added new ways to add more things to the All Flames and stuff like that, and there's new multiplicative things going on there. I wouldn't also then want to just be like, here's another plus 20% on the tree as well. I think that choice matters. I like that choice matters, and I think you should have to give up something to get something of the new thing, or have one of your loadouts focus on that and two of the others focus on something else. So
something else that sounds like it's going to help is you mentioned to me this idea that you might be getting more access to the content from the investment nodes that you're taking anyway via scarabs, right? Scarab drops.
Oh yeah, true. I mean, it was more of a SSF feature, but it will work for everyone. But both the map device where you apply like Breach League and a bunch of the nodes on the Atlas tree that are like, chance to have breaches in your maps, both also now increase the chance of you getting scarabs of that league's type. Which is kind of how PoE2 did it as well with their leagues, where
content to get
you get expedition to get more expeditions.
Great.
It's the same thing here. We just wanted to push that a bit more, give a little bit more agency, and influence the scarabs you're getting. That way, you're getting more of the ones you want, because there are a lot of scarabs, of course, and you can block a decent chunk of them, and you can invest in some others. And we're just like more agency is better here, like straight up. So may as well, and it just simply adds more value to the map device craft. So why not?
All right. I know we're jumping around topics a lot here, but let's just kind of be in the flow of things. But on the mercenary topic, so you've designed these guys to be so good that everyone's going to want to use one, right? And that's like the right way to design it objectively. But it does raise the question as to you need to make sure that they're not abrasive to use, that they're fun to use, that there's not necessarily problems where you feel like, oh, I have to use them. So how do you go about making sure that that's the case for these guys?
I mean, obviously them increasing the difficulty, is a thing that says maybe you don't want to necessarily, maybe they're not pulling their weight on a boss fight, and stuff like that, making it actually harder because of the life.
If you
don't have the right mercenary, you don't have the right gear on them. These are factors. However, generally they should be fun to have with you. You should want to engage with it. That is the league. If you're not playing in the league, or you don't want to engage with the league as much, you still got the end game, you still got betrayal, you still got, the settlers, all that stuff is all still there, the character balance changes, everything's still there.
Das Ding, ne? Man muss ja nicht alles mitnehmen.
Ideally, you'd want to engage with the mercenaries. They are generally more beneficial than not. You would have to really over-level them and not be upgrading them for them to start being kind of useless.
But the item and combat mechanic with them by itself is also, even if you're not hiring a mercenary, there's still, there's a source of items there. There's new things like mechanics that they've got going on with that. So, even that part is a thing in itself.
Well, something I didn't realize from watching it and then even playing for a while was that, and I think the UI is getting improved by launch for this, but when they have the currency pocket, when you don't actually pick a currency from that, they give you all the currency from that window.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so it was a bit juicier than I thought it was, actually. It kind of caught me by surprise.
Yeah. Why not? But it was interesting creating a, there's not many leagues where you get one reward.
Yeah.
And obviously not the currency pouch, but you
pick a item.
Picking a single piece of gear.
Yep.
And so we had to really think okay, I mean, you can see it, so you already get a pick from all the different slots. But it was how do we make sure that their gear is comparable to what a player would have, which is kind of you're identifying many and picking the best, and you're crafting a thing, and so it's always better than average. And so we had to really think about what their gear should and what their items should look like. to be comparable to something you would actually want or have. So yeah, it's rare to have a league where you actually only just get one item. Like even Ultimatum, sure you get one in many rounds in a row, so you still get up to 10, whereas this is just actually one.
So you have to make sure it's good, right?
Yeah, and that was actually kind of complicated to do, but you know, there's some pretty powerful stuff you can get from that. I mean, obviously the uniques are relatively easy to put in, but they do affect the mercenaries in some pretty crazy ways. But the you know, rare items and stuff like that, yeah, it was a little bit complicated to actually get that to feel good, such that you feel like, you know, I actually want to take that as opposed to just always taking the currency. But if you want to do that, go ahead as well.
Was there any kind of, just out of curiosity, was there any kind of thought on like as to what sort of items or what sort of mods they roll on their items then? Since they're like, they are kind of specific builds.
Yeah, kind of. It is relative to the build more so, yes. Yeah. Like there are like 30 something different archetypes. So we talked about like the Striker and I can't remember the names of half Eruptor and stuff, but there are like 30 something of them. And, you know, there's a Chaos Mage and there's ones with curses and ones with auras and ones with, I'm obviously listing all the utility stuff because I know that, you know, it's the aura bots of Trathus really is probably how a lot of people are going to see it.
No aura, exiled.
But actually, there's a lot of custom skills in there. They're not entirely player skills.
Yeah,
I know we touched on the Trathus skills,
but we, you know, so mit ganz normalen Gear und alles, also
there's maybe between 16, around 16 of them. Some of them are
cool.
Get
those,
like,
right?
They can just be in their little pouch. And you can
just take one.
You can pick them, and when if you defeat them, they drop it, and you get it, and that's a new. So it's kind of like a transfigured gem in a way, but it's a Trathen gem, and it's just so that's a way of delivering a bunch of new skills. And you have, I know you have like Bloodstorm Call, which is like physical.
Das Gear kann man scheinbar ändern,
so
so wie es aussah.
You know, so there might be some builds that want to do
Aber
that.
ich glaube, die Gems kannst du bei denen nicht ändern.
Shield throws and a whole bunch of different things. We saw the Siege Ballista in the live stream, but there's certainly a whole bunch of them. I know there's a kind of Incinerate based Blast Ray. Blast Rain was it? Yeah, like arrow comes down, does a wave of almost like an Incinerate wave out of it and stuff like that. So like,
some fun with that.
You know, spoiling a bunch of them.
Interessant wäre, ob man denen die Gems klauen kann.
But yeah, there's heaps of different skills there, which is pretty cool.
Wenn die irgendwie welche haben, die cool gewalt sind.
High cooldown and different passive skills and stuff like that as well. So like, there's a lot of stuff.
Should have put more of those in the video, honestly.
Yeah, possibly. Probably. Yeah. There's gonna be some surprise and cool stuff for people to find. You know, it was a 42-minute presentation. You know,
zulassen, dass man auch Gems reinpacken kann.
Give a taste. Let people find a lot of cool stuff on live. So,
in terms of making them fun to like manage and hire and things like that, if you'd asked me before playing it, I would have said like, oh yeah, you want to be able to like spend some sort of passives on them or something like that. But then actually after playing it, I was like, oh, it's kind of good that you didn't go to that level because then there's no lock-in with them. You can change between them easily.
Would have been a bit annoying. I think.
Yeah, and too much tedious upkeep.
Low micromanagement on this. So like doing the gear, but you won't have to do that too often. They don't level up. They don't have like they have a passive tree behind the scenes. You just don't get to see it or engage with it.
I wasn't actually sure. Was that when it's actually allocated?
Okay, man kann den Passive Tree nicht anpassen.
They have a
und auch nicht sehen.
Secret proprietary.
Yeah. I mean,
die haben also einen fixen Tree, also ist Gems ändern wahrscheinlich, naja, glaube ich, oder?
Some stuff going on, but you don't need to care about that.
Weil es gibt ja ein Aura-Bot-Dings.
As far as you know, they're higher level. They've made somewhat intelligent decisions about their passive points and whatnot.
Die Augen gibt. Das heißt, wenn du den nimmst, kannst du auch die Augen wahrscheinlich dann anpassen, wenn es geht.
Some are better than others. Some will be good for your build. Much like you will have, here's the meta ascendancies for a league. Probably those, each meta ascendancy then has the meta mercenary for the league and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it'll be matched to your builds,
yeah, it's going to be pretty crazy, I suspect, in the end. There's like, you know, as much as it's pretty simple to just arrange them, there's going to be a lot of little minor complexities.
That's poor path of building, guys.
I was going to say, like, are they going to have to implement some interesting...
They're definitely going to be a part of your build, so it's going to go in there.
Yeah. 100%.
They can give you auras and various other buffing skills. I had a Templar that had like an aura, and he had the smite with the lightning aura.
Your meta build, then for that you need your 3 meta mercenaries, and then your meta animate guardian, and then you've got oh my god, too many. I mean, at least a lot more items will be getting put to use.
Auch geil werden.
I'll be curious to see how the animate guardian feels because I don't know. Like that one has obviously the skill gem cost as well, potentially like support.
Of course.
But, so that's obviously a bit more of a tax, whereas these guys are just a free add-on on top. You know, they don't cost you anything except gold.
I mean, gold.
Yeah, gold. You know. Which was you intentionally didn't go for an upkeep cost for them, which I noted.
Yeah. I mean, you already earned their you still got to pay them a little bit, but you defeated them. You don't need to pay them by the hour anymore.
There's a gold cost if they die, which I found I had a couple die early on, but then they were mostly, especially if I picked good ones, they were staying alive. Like I had one guy that I was ridiculously tanky, and then some of them had like 4k life, and this guy had like vitality and enduring cry and kind of like a fizz aura and immortal call and things like that. I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are kind of better than me.
That's true. Often you might find yourself aspiring to become more like your mercenary.
Yes.
But look, these are trained fighters from a ruthless place in Trathus, and they've come here, and they're like, "What are all you weaklings doing?" And so,
it was quite confronting when I was like doing my usual running through mud flats with my ranger in a Hessian sackcloth clothing, and then I run into literally the ranger one, and they're like wearing Giga MTXs and they got like all these different supported skills, and they're like comboing them together, and I'm like, whoa.
It's giving you something to aspire to. It's like, this is what I can become. Whoops.
I felt really good when I fired them later.
Yeah, look, remember, they came here of their own choice. They haven't been exiled here as a criminal left to rot on a beach.
I have to say, they kind of feel like suckers. So they've got this honor code system, right, that says that if a challenger comes and challenges them, they have to wager literally one of the pieces of clothing they're wearing of the challenger's choosing, and the challenger doesn't have to put up anything. Like, you don't have to wager anything of yourself. Like, I feel like in a previous Path of Exile, we might have be like, oh yeah, you have to gamble your item.
But if you remove the game mechanic from the equation and you go, okay, let's say you and I have a duel and I get to take your shoes, and my sacrifice is I have to die. I don't think that's a fair trade. Now,
but this isn't a world where you can revive.
Yeah, but they don't know that.
Okay, fair enough. Good
and
point.
honestly, if I have to go your shoes versus my 15% experience, I don't know if I'm gonna.
Pretty nice boots.
Yeah, sure, but that's part of my level I just lost. So I don't know if I'll take that trade.
Yeah, well, you got me there. That's a good point. We'll get some more questions about the mercenaries there. Do mercenaries count as minions? Has been asked.
Oh, I said 15%, and I realized that is not correct.
Oh, what was the...
I'm just making up numbers.
No.
Ignore me. I know that's the wrong number.
No. What have you done? That's going to be quoted.
I just quickly glanced at chat, and I'm like, oh, geez, I said I just made something up on the spot.
Warum wird die Frage nicht beantwortet?
The question was, do mercenaries count as minions for the purpose of various minion-based things? Like
they don't
minions?
count as a semantic minion for minion damage and all of that. But I know, for example, all the how there's bosses and they have certain skills because they're less avoidable. They deal less damage to your minions. They also count as they also get that damage reduction from those things because they're not like going. There's an AOE here. I'm getting out of it, and they're going to jump back in like you are. They're just going to soak the damage, and so we've made it so obviously that, they don't take as much damage from those unavoidable attacks, so to speak, and much like how your minions do and whatnot. But again, they are pretty tanky. So on top of that,
on that same spirit of
Imperial 2 best companion, true.
We're talking about it, it's like yesterday I was asking can you heal them with the minion flasks or something like that to heal them in between combats, and later I got a message saying that you guys have changed it so that they heal out of combat now.
Yeah, it was taken from the it's something I actually really like that the minions do in PoE 2, where when there's some downtime they kind of regenerate back to full life. So that change was made yesterday actually, and
good.
Yeah, so now the mercenary, you don't have that thing where you have to give it some life regen, and explored a few different options, but it was just you know what? Just if there's a little bit of downtime, or it's more if they haven't lost life in the last some amount of time, they just
Pinnacle
bosses life. So
mit Currency zum draufcraften.
You don't just have them sitting at 10% life.
Wäre naheliegend auch, dass es auch kommt, oder? Dass wir Influenced Items haben.
Brought into Pinnacle content is one of the other questions I'm saying.
Yeah, anyway.
Wenn die jetzt schon neue
nice, cool.
Pinnacle Bosse in PoE 1 bringen.
People seemingly from based on the questions don't believe that you can have a 6-person party and have 6 mercenaries. You won't.
Also diese Currencies haben es mir angetan.
I mean, it is too crazy.
But
you do allow that, right?
We do.
Yeah, we do.
That's the thing. Okay.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of auras. But I'm very much looking forward to playing my. Everyone knows I play my support characters, and you'd expect, you're a support character, so you can get a DPS merc now and not have to play with your friends. But I'm thinking, well, hold on, I can be a support character and have a support mercenary and support my friends even more. So like, you know, it's all win.
Stimmt. Du kannst ja einen Aurabot samt Aurabot spielen.
Yeah, I mean, while leveling, I certainly felt like the DPS ones were viable if I was playing more of a supportive role, or if I was like struggling in that regard. They did seem like they were actually able to kill things. Is that something that can happen in an endgame though? Like that seems hard to believe.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, you can give them Headhunter, you can give them all of that stuff, and they take the damage, they scale it. Like, the only thing they don't have is, you know, your skill, which could be bad, and thus they could be better than you, or you could be very good, and in which case, you know, I'm just saying, like, they are still a computer. Right? They are still, at the end of the day, doing that, so they might not make the smartest decisions that you agree with.
There's like custom AI for each skill, right?
There is, 100%. And
so they're a bit above the 50 percentile of players.
Yeah, they might be. I'd say around 55% percentile average. You know,
better than half you.
Computers can be good. So, but at the end of the day, you know, when you're like, you know, giga zooming and obliterating everything before it can even appear on your screen entirely, you know, there's a question of how much use can they really be, and that's where I come in and say, look, the floor is still they're half a party member worth of loot increase, and they are, you know, whatever auras and all of that. So you might pivot from more. You definitely want, like, DPS ones are real good all the way through, but once you again become the power of 1,000 gods, like,
there's a certain point where
there's only so much you can do. Now that being said, if you do want to play a more passive character and you want them to just go wild, like they're pretty strong. There is, of course, the thing where if you miscalculate that, you go into your pinnacle relying on them to kill it, and you miss the mark and they die. It's not like you're bringing them back in that area.
They only have one
so
portal.
now you're like, oh, damn it. I'm not sure what to do now, and you've got to do it the hard way. So, but yes, much like the new Change the Animate Guardian, if they die, they don't come back into that area.
Sounds like a good way of doing it.
Sequential instances, yeah.
Much better than the losing gear and all that, all that
we
drama.
Went through all that. I even had the like, maybe in Ruthless they should lose an item, or maybe, you know, I was like, is that a thing? I was like, oh, no, look, it's either right or wrong. Let's just go with what we know is right, what people will like, and what is not going to just cause a bunch of unnecessary. Oh my god, now I got to do this again, and something unpredictable happens, or some monster skill is like particularly imbalanced, and it's like, oh my god, it just lost so much currency, and like, so all good.
Sounds great. Awesome. So Settlers Town went core. We didn't have to rebuild it. Phenomenal. Thank you. Gold goes core, which obviously as an experiment feels like a success then. Jonathan, I think you feel like you can speak to that.
I mean, sure.
Gold was a core feature of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely happy with where Gold, like, you know, with how Gold improves things. I mean, you know, we originally did it as a way to reduce the number of things that monsters can drop while still having it so that they feel like they drop things.
Yeah, like culling the
But I mean, I honestly, like, I think it's been a straight up improvement, and obviously it's really good to be able to work with the you know, the new the trade, the currency market and stuff like that. Like, I think that stuff, like, you know, I don't know that there'd be another way to do that as successfully as the way that works. So like, I think that's worked well, and it's funny because you know, like, on the surface, you're like, oh, every game's got gold. But the funny thing about it is that in most games, gold is a lot of games have like bound items, and then gold is the only thing you can trade. In our game, you've got unbound items, and gold is the only thing you can't trade, and that's why it sort of works as that kind of trading kind of thing. So I think the way we've done it, like, it works well, and I definitely want to keep it. Like, it's got a definite place for sure, and like, we may be able to expand its use as well more in the future potentially. Like, right now, it's not used for like shops or anything like that. Like, you know, it's used for gambling, but it's not used for the regular shops. And like, there were some issues around that, but we might change that one day. Sort of hard to say, but you know, I think it's definitely it's good.
Yeah. Okay. And that means obviously currency exchange is staying core and things like that. It looks like shipments were staying core, and that's one that I see is like mixed opinions on. Some people love it. You know, it's passive income.
Schon passive income.
But it's also like an obligation. You know, it's a thing you got to check in on. It's busy work to an extent.
We did some changes there. So we did slow down. You know, we made them take longer, and proportionally, in some cases, increase the rewards. The intention there being, of course, that way you have to deal with it less.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the focus of the league anymore.
It's
we don't want it to be overtaking what you're doing all the time.
Yeah. And look, I expect these things to be a bit divisive, 100%. Some people love it, some people don't, and that's great. That's everything in PoE.
Ja, man muss ja auch nicht jede
everything we
Liga
add,
spielen.
and you can
Heißt
choose
League
to do it,
zum
you can choose
Beispiel
not to do
gebe ich auch.
it. Maybe you choose to just do the
heißt
crops
Mechanik.
and do the shipments and not worry
Also.
about all the other stuff to do with it. Maybe
man
you
ja nicht
just
machen.
use the map runners and put all of your gold investment into that.
Ja, das ist ja das Schöne.
You know,
Es gibt so viele Leagues,
there
man
will
muss nicht
be,
alles spielen.
Other ways to spend gold in the future. Maybe because you don't want to deal with them, you build up an
Stimmung hier
excess,
so?
and then all of a sudden we add the gambling
Also
strongbox
Patch
from PoE
ist
2 or
Hammer.
something like that to sink the rest.
Yes,
Who knows?
dude.
Yeah, we'll
Ansonsten ein
see.
bisschen müde mittlerweile, glaube ich.
It's a fun
Es ist schon sehr viel
that will
Gelaber.
come
Ich
to
kann mir so
PoE
viel
one, I
Gelaber
promise
schalte ich
you.
irgendwann aus.
So,
Aber der
but
Patch,
there'll be
also
ways to do it, but
WTFA.
we'll feel it out and see
Holy
how much
shit.
gold people are getting relative to losing as well a bit, and
Was
then
hältst du vom
see. But
Patch?
the intention here is that if it is feeling annoying and how much you have to deal with it, then we've missed the mark, and we'll probably even
Patch
adjust
Notes
things a
werden?
bit
Sind noch nicht
further
da?
as well.
Okay, yeah.
But again, like everything, it's up to you, your agency, your choice. Like,
Wahrscheinlich nach dem
That's an
Q&A,
interesting
oder?
point, because I feel like before it wasn't optional because it was there and it was free stuff. So why wouldn't you do it? But now you're actually, both in terms of gold, but also your passive application, like, are you actually even investing in having those ores appear versus something else? So it's not necessarily just like a free thing on top that you're obligated to do. It's now a more conscious decision.
I
right?
could see it feeling mandatory, and if it does feel mandatory, then we've missed the mark a little
So
bit for sure.
you want to avoid that.
I don't want it to feel so mandatory, but that being said, I also wouldn't want it to feel so terrible that you never want to engage with it. So there's always a fine line to hit, and
But there's stuff you can only get from there, so there's always going to be that element.
yeah, for
like,
sure. If
yeah.
you want to get the tattoos and rune grafts, and some of those rune grafts, a lot of them are like pretty crazy off-build stuff, and there's a good set of like chase ones in there, and there's some pretty crazy stuff in there to
Der
get.
hat gute Stimmung.
But I think it's a better system. I like the idea that now Settlers is giving two different passive tree mechanics that can coexist
Tattoos,
as
runes,
the
yeah.
rewards, aside from obviously recombinating and map running and stuff. But as opposed to like just the freaking insane enchants that you were getting on your weapons
So
before.
the
with,
enchants
like-
are gone then. This
Yeah.
replaces that, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think most
They
people
were
expected.
they were a little bit much on the power creep axis. It was kind of just a bit crazy, but I wouldn't say that we won't see some sort of weapon enchant system
Weil er es
back
wichtig
in the
war.
future.
Ja, mein Biorhythmus ist gerade andersrum.
Played
And
with the
we're a
idea
bit more
before.
regulated and stuff like that, but because there's room for that, there's design space for that, but we
Danke,
never know what
Frenchie. Ich
form. But
dachte,
I
ich wäre
like
der
that
Einzige, der
Settlers is
diese
where you
Ohrdinger
go
einfach
to get your
komplett
alternate
kacke
passive tree
findet.
stuff. I think for changing masteries and
Was
changing nodes, I
wird?
like that as the reward from it.
It was a pretty funny reveal of the live reveal of the recombination changes because everyone was like, "Oh no, you did it! You got rid of the old one and replaced it with this." But
I
then
know,
obviously the old one's still there.
we're here seeing all of the L's, and then I'm like, don't worry, they'll come back. They'll come back. It's
Also
all
auf
right.
Haxi habe ich da keinen Bock drauf.
So that's all right. And then all of a sudden, L's L, www, saved. I love it. I very
feel like that was
thoroughly enjoy
intentional,
watching
but,
chat. Yeah.
So you kept the old version of recombination. Is that changed or nerfed in any way, or is that just as it was?
The old way.
Moment mal, ich lade das
I
auf
can't
YouTube
speak to
hoch,
that
jetzt
with
steht
an
da Fick im
absolute
Chat- im
certainty,
Chat.
and I would have to talk to
Scheiße.
one of the
YouTube
main
ist
designers
doch
dealing with
family
that.
friendly.
But I say like we should pretty much keep it the same.
Yep.
And if there is a change, it needs to be like very much justified. It's not like
Yeah. So
people
you're-
like it for a reason. Like keeping it alongside the other one and then gutting it is obviously not
Yeah.
not the play. You may as well have not kept it at that point. So yeah, it was certainly the
Fällt mir auf,
intention
dass
that we
bei
keep
Minute
it. It's
52
still a favorite. Like
Das
if
steht auch-
anything, I would be okay with making things more expensive. So it's a little bit harder to use at the top end when you're doing like the very. I think that is maybe the thing we concluded when you're interacting with a lot of the really special modifiers that you normally can't get on items. We're making it a bit more expensive. But I don't think that was a huge constraint anyway,
Not a
unless you
barrier
were
for the people doing
unless
it
you were going
usually.
a bit- yeah. Sure. So, I would prefer to do something like that instead of nerfing the power of it at this point. And I'm like 99% sure we didn't nerf the actual functionality of it. But
Yep.
I'll verify, and if it is the case, I will let the community know afterwards.
Okay. On the topic of gold, an ongoing thing has been that gold is, very present from the core Atlas mechanics and certain things, but other things just literally don't drop it. You do Blight or whatever, and you just don't get gold, or Sanctum just doesn't get gold. That's obviously a separate topic, but
gesehen bis
is
jetzt.
this something
Das
that has
geilste.
been normalized
sieht's
across
gar
the
nicht so
game? You
pixelig
want
aus.
players to be in a
We are
position where they
making-
can't use it?
We are making some adjustments. So, like
Noch
when we did
32
that,
mal
obviously we
32
went through the
Pixel auf
entire game, of
8
which
mal
there is a
8.
lot, and
Voll, glaub ich.
specifically we're like, do this, too much gold, lower, and we had penalties and increases all over the place, and a bunch of stuff was too low. Some stuff is, and I wouldn't say it's too high. It was actually probably relatively nice mostly. There was just a bunch of stuff that's just dead. And it is our intention for that to not be the case. So yeah, we do want to increase those. I don't know how much they'll necessarily increase by, but it is something that is on our radar 100%. So
yeah, okay, great. Because
heist is a good example.
Yeah, I think the most compelling argument I heard in favor of like making sure that those had access to gold was for the player who wanted to focus on just that. They just wanted to heist.
100%.
They can't currency exchange, right? That's the biggest problem.
100%. It isn't. It is just like let's say it is already a relatively divisive league, and then also the gold sucks. It's easy to perceive that as dead. So
yeah.
Look, there are some things where we maybe make an intentional decision because they are like too rewarding to be like it's not a place you're going to get a lot of gold, Sanctum, and then when we're like, okay, which we'll make some changes too. But then you have the things like heist, where I would say it isn't that regard, and it's just like, why is the gold bad here? And it's like, look, we just missed the mark. So
yeah. Oh, well, I guess since we brought it up, the Anti-Sanctum Alliance has been constantly messaging me, asking about, whether Sanctum's going to see any changes in terms of just kind of how much raw currency it prints early league for like a low investment for like really knowledgeable players, giving them such a massive advantage over less ones. Obviously, that's always the case, but it seems to a severe magnitude.
I don't have the exact changes because we're like going to do them today or Monday. But like, I would say no, it seems crazy. So they're not like massive grand rework, but at least for now, we're certainly going to give it less of the edge it has. Mm-hmm. I don't exactly know what form, but it's not just going to be untouched. In terms of like a grander future, like I would like to shift away from it just being pure regular currency and move into something where it has its own item and own reward mechanic that has some sort of interaction with something. Like almost every league has something special, and that one is just like, obviously it's got a relic meta system, but it's just like, here's some uniques, here's a different style of gameplay, but just like, here's all the currency. Then it becomes very quantifiably better or worse than just like core game. And obviously very, very early, it's very strong. And then, maybe juicing catches up, but then, it obviously gets a little bit crazy. In different axes, you get a lot more uniques, a lot more different things. But it's still, it's just that there's very easily quantifiable thing where it's like a very good strategy if you know what you're doing, especially very early on, as you're saying. But it needs its own thing. It 100% needs its own thing. So, but at least for now, it doesn't have to be as good as it is for how easy it is to do so. We'll make some changes. I just don't know the exact specifics. And as a result, they won't be in the patch notes today. It will be in another coming soon section because it is. Yes. Great. I mean, again, I'm not. Why would we stop developing now? We have another
week before. It's like, what are we going to do? Sit around and twiddle your thumbs? Exactly. Sounds good. With the like big changes to Betrayal, which look phenomenal, that's obviously like a big overhaul for that, and something that was really long awaited. It does kind of make me want to ask, like, do you have like another one that you're really looking forward to giving a similar treatment? I hear a lot of feedback about like quality of life around Bestiary, for example, being not where people want it.
That is on our radar. There's I know for like itemizing beasts and improving the quality of life there is a little bit annoying. Maybe more than a little bit. But like talking about like the Sanctum reward as an example, there's some others. Like I'd love to give Blight a bit of an overhaul. I'd love to
Blight.
Blight
overhaul wäre cool.
It's just all those. There's probably more that I want to actually look at the full list. Here's some obvious ones, but look, these things fall out of popularity. They fall out of favor. They get outdated, they become old, like
legacy of a decade.
It's what happens. But the good thing is, much like with Betrayal, we circle back and give it a whole fresh coat of paint, new rewards, new systems, new interactions, or step forward the storyline and evolve it into a mini sequel sometimes as an option. There's all these kinds of things that are completely things we could do. So like, purely hypothetical. Maybe you're now later on you're just delving and oh my god, there were the 3 cities and now there's a 4th city with a 4th boss, and you have what is this thing I'm finding?
100% confirmed.
Again, now because hypotheticals have to become realities. So
also, just like the Blight overhaul coming next week. And in my mind, you didn't even say it, but like temples are getting reworked. So I was like, you didn't even say it, but I said that in my mind, and now it's true. So I'll hold you to that.
Cannot confirm nor deny.
Phenomenal. Some rapid fire quality of life things to kind of follow on from the bestiary mention. We have like the ID all things in your inventory from PoE2. Love it. Would love to see it in Path of Exile 1. Any reason why it couldn't be a thing or wouldn't be a thing?
What?
Do you hate it? Do you hate my hands?
I can't remember what.
Control click at an NPC and
it's on my list. It's still on my list. It's
okay.
I have my here's all the quality of life stuff. It was like there was a section where it's like to discuss later again, and I put it in that, and I actually genuinely cannot remember why it wasn't just immediately and obviously doable.
Yeah, it seems like the thing if you want to do, you'd be like, yes, do it. So I assumed some hiccup.
There was one thing that was like blocking me from just being like, hey, 100% just do it. I just can't remember what it was.
Warum tragen die eigentlich alle Pullis?
It's a thing we can get around and make happen for sure. But like, yes, the being able to go to town and ID all.
Ist da gerade kalt oder was?
Very useful, and hideout as well was an extreme upgrade that I liked. So.
Well, tell me whatever Dev is working on, then I'll go make them lunch or something so they can focus.
I'll take you to them afterwards.
Oder ist das so ein Ding, dass Pullis einfach besser aussehen?
Because if I'm going to be held to things I'm saying, you're going to help buy them lunch. So.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. Some of the older bosses with phases.
Pulli und Wanderschuhe. Die wandern eigentlich.
To me is like
machen noch Pause.
Yeah, just like really long immunity phases. They feel quite dated at this point.
Katarina got the same treatment, where it's just like, oh, okay, like, maybe like 40 immunity phases is just a bit much. It's not, I don't know what the number was. It wasn't that, but like, it was just a bit much. But yeah, a lot of those are going to need a bit of overhaul as well. It's hard to justify going back and spending a lot of time on that, but there's sometimes very easy things we can do, because instead of doing that, we could just be making a brand new boss that's like way more epic, way more fun, and fits into a more modern and core thing. Whereas like some of those are just like very high end game, get some fragments. It's one boss of 4 that then gets to a pinnacle, and like, you want your pinnacles to be good. You certainly want your end of line bosses.
Oder vielleicht ist der erstmal nur für PoE1 und danach aufwärtskompatibel.
That having as many immunity phases as it was just doesn't hold
Manchmal
up
dauert es
now.
auch ein bisschen.
I would say it didn't even really hold up then either. It just, again, it takes you to really back out of the new stuff and go back and look at the thing to go, what is actually wrong with this, and look through everything and go, yeah, there's actually more bad here than I thought. And then you go through and fix it all and change it all and revamp it all and, do it again X years later.
It's been a while since we talked about this, but with a discussion about gold and the currency exchange, I feel like it's worth revisiting. Just like, how do you feel that the old trade manifesto holds up from way back in the day? Like now, in light of,
I would say that the currency exchange, like,
Currency
kind of
exchange
definitely
viel geiler.
shows that there's it's not like we didn't know there wasn't demand for instant trade, right? But the currency exchange definitely helped things a lot, and I know that we still want to do more stuff. Like I've kind of talked a little bit before about how there's other things we want to do, and I still think we want to do it. The main thing is that like the gold allows us to make it so that there can be a cost that isn't the cost of having to do the actual trade with individual other people. And so I do think there is a world where we can go to where we can have a different system. We'll probably prototype that in PoE2 first, I reckon, where we still don't have a permanent standard economy that, in PoE2 we've got an economy that will exist forever, but that's not going to be standard, right? Because that'll be the early access economy that will stick around. So we've still got an opportunity here to completely damage the economy without while being able to recover from it.
True.
So
I know from my perspective, when the currency exchange came out, I was like, after we played it, and it was such a relief of friction that I was like,
you were like, this is all we ever need.
Maybe this is enough. And then now after, and obviously then it started coming back a little bit, then playing 020 on PoE2, and then going to trying to trade for more items. I was like, I'm reminded of all the frustrations. I'm like, we definitely need more than just the currency exchange. So,
right.
I would say we scoped it out. We wanted to see if it was better enough, and then I was just like getting beyond angry trying to trade, and I'm like, why is the whole server AFK?
I think it might have been worse in PoE2 because
I think
damals currency traden war richtig
what I found
Arsch.
in PoE2, a fun little trade thing.
Ich bin so froh über dieses Currency Exchange, ne?
People didn't know.
Also wirklich.
Go to you invite them, they come to your hideout.
Basic etiquette
And I'm like,
stuff.
are you coming? What's going on? And then they're sitting in Act 2 town, just like waiting for me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. No one knows that you just go to your hideout. That's a new thing to have to learn.
Oh, and it's shifted as well, like weird new kind of like things of like culture things have grown out of that. Just like kind of independently from different like new people versus pre-existing PoE players, and it's become a strange little.
It's
thing.
real fun to watch, eh?
It's an interesting little social experiment thing going on, isn't there? But yeah, I think like I think what you've touched on there is that it does just kind of raise the question of like, oh, where should the friction be? The friction being in gold feels really good. I think
that is exactly the thing that we
UX.
would prefer, right?
Yeah.
The thing that's going to be the question is that if gold is the only friction, there still needs to be that the cost of it is enough. So the thing that the trade manifesto talks about basically is you get this issue with you don't get it with currency. So doing it for currency is actually fine because. Currency, it acts as a sink. Like it is currency, so it's okay to have like fluid trade for that. When you start getting into items, then you start to have that issue where the stuff at the top is worth like astronomical amounts, and the stuff at the bottom is worth nothing. And like any trade will cause that, but the easier trade is, the more you get that. So you've kind of got this like if trade it was very hard, you get like a flat line. You turns a more of an exponential growth curve as you as trade becomes easier and easier. So effectively, you just have to make sure that we're hitting the right point. And what I worry about. And this is one of the things as well. If we first do something like this, we're probably going to have to price the gold cost pretty high as a starting point,
for sure, yeah.
and then kind of maybe back it off as we see like what the effect is. Because if gold is the only barrier, then you're going to see that kind of issue.
Well, gold's like a direct kind of translation of your like play time / play
Exactly.
quality,
And
your efficiency
so
that trade capacity.
So the fact that it works that way, where it's effectively character, like bound to you, effectively means that we can use it this way. And that's kind of the difference between us and other games. So I think it will work, but it's like, we're just going to have to be very careful. 100%.
Because I 100% get like the concern about it, because this is about like what you're actually putting on your character and circumventing whether you actually do any gameplay for that. But this makes it so that you are doing gameplay for that, and it's an alternate method. And
so we have to be careful, especially in the early game, where if you can just get something that some high level player just doesn't care about anymore, so they sell it for nothing. And then but it costs you, but it
still has to cost you
effectively
something.
costs it sort of needs to cost you something. So we just have to make sure we're getting that right. So when we do it, it'll we're gonna have to be very careful around that stuff for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, even if it was just kind of like you can only really like realistically do a couple items a day, then it's not your bulk trading kind of method.
Can be,
it exists alongside the existing one or something like that. That could be a prototype for it. So it seems like it feels possible now, whereas before it was like a no way never. That's crazy.
It is possible now for sure. It is possible.
Which is it's just I'm excited to see what you do to experiment with that. Mark seems keen.
Won't be too far away, I think.
Bloody AFK people.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna prototype it in PoE 2 first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Where we've got a bit more leeway there.
Like you said.
Ja,
I mean,
da kann man halt noch mehr testen in PoE 2, ne?
Love and sanctity to Path of Exile 1 there for the people maybe concerned that you don't care about it.
Right.
So
I guess so, yeah.
And just one more note. And all you people who are listing items...
Here he goes, rant time.
And then you're not even AFK. You're in a map, and you're just not replying.
Don't list it for that price if you don't want to sell it.
Please,
Stop it.
Please. Or actually, no, you're going to keep going now, because then you're going to have more drive to get this new system implemented. So, yeah, it backfires, but whatever.
There is that. Make trade as bad as possible to motivate you guys.
No, we're not having some accelerationist concept here. That's terrible.
And that is the note that we'll wrap up the Q&A on today. Thank you very much, folks, for hanging out with us. And thank you, Jonathan and Mark, for answering our questions today. I look forward to playing more of Secrets of the Atlas and Mercenaries of Travis.
Yeah. Well,
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everyone has fun, and we're back.
Yeah, we're so back. We're so back. So back. See you later,
Wir sind schon back, ja.
See you later.
Hero 1 ist wieder back. Ja, krass, ey. Krass. Da kommt einiges auf uns zu mit der neuen League. Q&A war gerade auch geil. Hammer. Hammer.